Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Creative Insider Podcast, dedicated to helping creatives become more accomplished professionals. Now, you may be wondering, this isn't Georgi's voice, and you're right about that. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Désirée. I'm a creative brand strategist, and I'm the second half behind the Creative Insider. This week, we speak to a duo whose channel and whose projects, whose videos especially, have been inspiring me for the past few years. Not only how they create their content, but also the mission that they stand for. Colin Chee is founder and creator of Never Too Small, and his business partner, Joel Beath, join us in this conversation where we talk about Australian urban thinking, small footprint design, publishing a book, creating videos internationally throughout the pandemic without traveling, and also what's on the horizon. These two might be called Never Too Small, but their thinking is definitely big. Before we dive into the conversation, though, I'd like to invite you to join us in our Creative Insider world on thecreativeinsider.com. We also have a newsletter, which I personally curate for you on a monthly basis, so that's where you'll be reading my handprint, so to speak. And I'd also like to invite you to engage with us on Instagram at TCI Podcast or on LinkedIn as well on the Creative Insider podcast page. We hope you get inspired by this conversation. The Never Too Small channel has been a source of inspiration and calm for me for many years, and Colin and Joel are very much a breath of fresh air. So enjoy and tune in.
The whole world stops just like that. The whole world stops just like that.
Welcome, Colin. Welcome, Joel.
Thank you for having us, Désirée.
Thanks for joining the Creative Insider from Australia. So really quite a ways away from Frankfurt and Europe. So Colin and Joel are, actually Colin is the creator of Never Too Small, which we're going to get
That's
into
right.
later. And Joel, from what I understood from our sort of warm-up, is his brother in arms and soon to be more involved in Never Too Small and publishing. And I'm going to let you two maybe introduce yourselves first in your own words, a little bit about your background.
Sure.
And yeah, Colin, go for it.
I suppose I'm the one to start first, yeah? So I'm the creator of Never Too Small, and my name is Colin Chee. Of course, I don't have any Australian accent, but because I come from Malaysia and been in Australia for about 20 years now. And then,
And I'm Joel. I think I've probably got more of an Australian accent, although a lot of people sometimes say I sound English because my mother's actually from England. But I was actually born in a little tiny country town in New South Wales called Beath, but that's by the by. I joined Never Too Small about a year and a half ago. I saw what they were doing, and I had a close relationship with a couple of the founders as well, and came on as a joint founder to really accelerate the digital parts of Never Too Small and grow it into the media company that we're turning it into today.
Cool. Well, for anybody who does not know Never Too Small is actually, I was saying this before, is sort of like my Zen in short videos. It's a focus on small living, small footprints, and a focus on architecture and how to revamp spaces. And so I'm thrilled to have you both here. And Colin, you just said you originally come from Malaysia. Can we sort of get into that? What's your background? How did you land in Australia? Well, I guess because it's, next door pretty much, but what was your background?
it's kind of next door. It's about 8 hours flight only.
Wow,
I came here for uni. Yeah, so I came here to study multimedia design, and then I sort of major in video productions mostly. And after my degree, I continued to study another sort of TV and film productions course. And after that, I've been stick with video production until right now. So it's been about 15 years now.
Oh, wow. Okay. And Joel, do you have a similar background in video production as well, or more like digital?
My background is I studied journalism in university. I then left university and went straight into a career as a high-rise window cleaner, which is an odd transition for a journalist to jump into.
Oh, you rise
I didn't
high.
know that.
Yeah.
Tell us
Crown
more.
Crown Towers, Cole. Just hanging off the edge of the building and doing a couple of drops a day. That's what they call it in the industry, drops, where you go down the side of the building, you clean it.
Next time when I see the towers windows, I would think of you.
How big are those towers? How tall
it's 40
are they?
stories.
Oh, wow. Okay.
And I'm terrified of heights, Désirée.
I was about to say, so you're a daredevil. So no, you're not a daredevil.
Yeah, no, absolutely not. But I sort of drifted around through my early 20s. I'm intrinsically a very creative person, but I had many different jobs. I worked in nightclubs and bars and things like that. But it was around the age of 25, 26 where I started to, I found a job with a small production company, started working as a runner there, really loved making ads and things like that. Started a very small media company with my brother. We ended up turning that into Australia's largest independent digital agency, which was acquired by Accenture 3 years ago.
Oh, cool. What is the agency called?
It was called Loud and Clear Creative. And it was acquired. But during that time, we actually worked with some of the production team that Colin worked with, that actually the production team behind Never Too Small, which is called New Mac
Agency.
New Mac Agency. They were our video supplier, and I fell in love with the team and the work that they were doing. And, I knew I wanted to spend more time with them. And then when I sort of saw what they were doing with Never Too Small, it was just so beautiful creatively, and it's such an important message and such an important thing to actually bring to everyone's attention. I knew I had to be part of that, and that's how I came to be.
So how did you
involved.
both meet? Do you remember? Or is it that long ago?
I used to be Joe's slave, really. So if Joe's got any video projects, they will hire New Mac Video Agency, which I work as an editor and also a videographer. And I would just time at Joe's office and film stuff for Joe. Mostly like creative corporate videos and stuff like that, and social media videos at some point. And that's how we met. Yeah.
So when our agency needed video production done, we'd get Cole's team to produce them for us.
Cool. So, Colin, you have your own agency now too, though, if I understood correctly, right?
Which I think is a Never Too Small agency. No, not really. I used to work for New Mac Video Agencies, and Never Too Small is really part of a side project for us, because when I bought this apartment back in 2011 off plan, and then in 2013 I moved into this 37 square meters studio apartment.
Is that the one we're seeing in the background?
Yeah.
Oh, cool.
So that's the whole apartment.
We might get a house tour out of this.
Oh, probably not. It's too messy. Anyway, underwear on the floors and dirty laundries, and so. After that, I kept looking on YouTube for inspirations of how to decorate and, design my place. And then I started looking at Instagram and Pinterest, and also architects and interior designers' website, mainly Melbourne-based. And I saw a lot of designs that on their website is not available on YouTube. And then so I really wanted their service or advice how to decorate my place. I approached James McPherson, which is another co-founder for Never Too Small. He used to be the boss, the owner for New Mac Video Agency, which is I work for. And so I said to him, I got this idea to create a YouTube channel about small spaces design. And could I use the the camera gear in the studio, and they say, yeah, let's make it into like a side project for the companies when we have our free time.
Ah, cool. Okay.
So, and I decided to sort of blindly email a couple designers and architects saying, hey, you know, I work for a video agency. I want to create a YouTube channel about small space design. I love your design. Would you be a part of my new project? And I think I emailed about 10 architects the first time, and then only one of them replied.
Yeah, the beginning is
who was
tough.
that, Paul?
Yeah.
Ben Edwards, who happened to be the architects who designed our Never Too Small office, and then who also shared the office briefly with us. And now they bought their own new office building, and it just moved out recently.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, we have that friendship with them. Yeah.
I think the beginning is always hard.
That's episode 1, isn't it? Microlux.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sorry, Désirée.
I think no problem. I think I remember that one. I was actually watching your most recent one yesterday, but we're getting ahead of ourselves. I was just saying that I think the beginning is always hard because you were saying you were writing 10 people and then only one answered when we got started as well. I know Georgi, who is the founder of the Creative Insider of our podcast, he wrote a lot of people too, and everybody was like, oh yeah, but no, I'm too shy and I don't want to be hear my voice. And it was really difficult to actually get the first people or the first person, even singular, on there. And I remember him and I then did the first episode like together to really show how a conversation could look like and what basically our MVP of the conversation, what the whole feel and vibe could look like. And then people were like, oh, okay, no, maybe I could do that. Yeah, that sounds okay. And it's not an interview. It's you know, it could be chill. And yes, in the beginning it was really hard. I can definitely commiserate with that.
Yeah, I think the first 10 episodes is really hard for me to approach people. And usually they just straight away say no or no answer at all, no reply from them. But then I think after 10 episodes where we have like enough subscribers and the views online, people tend to accept the offer if they can.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's just getting easier along the way.
Well, you have more practice too. And you're beginning to
exactly.
have a footprint. So people are beginning to see, okay, who's behind it? What are you doing? And so, yeah, that does become easier, I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. Sometimes I stalk their profile a bit on LinkedIn and say, hey, you know Ben Edwards. And then there's the video we made of his design recently. And they're like, oh, Ben Edwards on there. I can be on there as well. So, yeah.
Yeah, it becomes a tribe.
Yeah. Yeah. And now, actually, when we first made, when I started Never Too Small last time, the first 4 episodes, the first episode, of course, is Ben Edwards' Microlux apartment. And then the second episode, I kind of wanted to try like a small sculptures or artist, small form artist. So he happened to be an architect as well, who's making those maze sculpture. Joe's really like that, the artist anyway, the one with the maze one, Joe. Yeah. And then after we filmed that, and I happened to find just finished design micro apartment in Cairo flat, which is just next to our office, not far from it. And I emailed the architect and saying if I could film his apartment, and the one with the yellow kitchen door.
Oh, yeah.
And, yeah. So that one hasn't been seen in any publications yet. So he was very kindly let me film the apartment. And after I finished the episodes, right, and then I started thinking, you know, no one's really come to the YouTube and watch it, put on Facebook. There's hardly any views. There's hardly any views at all. So I thought maybe I could approach other publications like Tree Huggers and The Zine and stuff like that. So I started writing email to them and saying, you know, this micro apartment in Melbourne, Australia, designed by Nicholas Agius, architect Nicholas, just finished. And then, you know, there are photos. Like you can get photos from the designers, but if you want to use our video accompany with your articles, feel free to use it. And then Tree Huggers publication, which is a Canadian digital publication, they actually use our video. And that's how episode 3 suddenly go boom, and then people starting to notice us.
Yeah.
And same as episode 4. And then I sort of starting talking to the writers at Tree Hugger, and then we started talking to each other a bit, and I say feel free to use the video if next time you're looking for content. So each time when we publish something, and Tree Huggers would write, the article about the design, and then they use the video, which is kind of like win-win for both situations for us, I think.
How did you come up with the idea to do that? Did you read that somewhere, or are you innately an extrovert and looking to put everything out there?
Well, I just figure it out and think, how can I get more views to the channel, I suppose, and then just try different ways how to approach people and see what will happen.
Mm-hmm. So I guess you have that sort of, I feel like you have an innate business mindset, if you could say it that way.
Joe?
We're working on him. We're working on him. He's a project in motion, Désirée. I think the thing with Colin and the I don't know, when you hear about most successful creative journeys, right, and people creating something from scratch, it comes down to that the common theme always seems to be persistence mixed with luck, right? Like, I think Cole there was like, he could have released the video, put it up on YouTube, and walked away and said, "Oh well, I tried that and I gave that a shot." But
yeah,
the success story there is that he didn't say, "Oh, I'm just going to walk away," and that was a fail. He pursued.
Oh, I did walk away for a bit.
Oh, you did?
Absolutely.
Let's actually talk about failing too later.
Sometimes. Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's hard work, right? How many hours did you put in at the beginning before, you actually, or not hours, but how much time do you feel you put in at the beginning of Never Too Small before you felt it was really getting big and what you wanted it to be?
Actually, when I first started in July in 2017, I made 4 episodes within like 5 months' time. And then I leave it there for another 5 months and did nothing. But episode 3 and 4 sort of pick up through magazine and stuff. So they started using our videos, and then the subscribers coming up, the viewers numbers coming up. And then James sort of encouraged me to keep making more videos of Never Too Small episodes. And then that's how I decided to I really want to commit to this project and then keep going. But at the start, it was really only me doing the whole show. So from looking for properties for design and then contacting the architects all the way A to Z, basically. So I did that for at least, I think, almost a year.
But next to your original
Next to my full-time job as well.
Oh, wow.
So most of the episodes I film is during the weekends, also the editing time as well. Because sometimes we get a bit of a free time in office, I will work on it. But a lot of the time I just work Saturday and Sunday in the office editing the videos and trying to sort of fine-tune it and find the voice, the style for Never Too Small.
Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
And what's really exciting for us, Désirée, is that we've just actually transitioned from Cole being a full-time employee of the video agency into now we've got, I think, 4 or 5 full-time employees at Never Too Small now. So it's taken that big step into something that feels very tangible and very real, and it's a beast that needs to be fed. So we, nothing like the urgency of having staff to make sure that we keep going and drive in the right direction.
Yeah. And so you founded it 2013, you said, because that's when you moved into your apartment. So in the last circa 10 years, or no, that's 9, 8 years?
No, not really. No, I moved in here 2013, but I really started Never Too Small in 2017, July.
Okay. Oh, wow. Yeah. So you're pretty young still, or the company is pretty young still. Yeah, 4 years. Wow. Yeah. And then the first year you did full time and did that on the side with James being like, okay, that's fine, you can do that. Use our equipment, and then you started building it from there, basically.
Yeah. So the first 2 years, or even 3 years, I worked full time for New Mac still, but Never Too Small is more like a side project for us. And then after that, James, our team basically put more resources into making the Never Too Small work. So we have the producers helping along, like Lindsay and Luke. Lindsay is our powerhouse producer, which I should mention her name because without her, there's no Never Too Small. I'm sure.
There's nothing.
There's nothing.
There's nothing. It's paper without Lindsay.
I have a friend who calls it the glue. Somebody needs to be the glue.
Yeah. Well, she's like the chicken hands that keep all the chicks together, or Joe's and Ann would just be everywhere,
nice.
right?
That's a really nice metaphor too.
Lindsay is wonderful in that she she's never, she's got a production background, but she's never dealt with creating a book before. She's never dealt with running an e-com website or anything like that. And she's had to figure out how to do all of these things really quickly because the creatives are off doing the creative things, and she's sort of there to make sure that, well, it's not picking up the pieces, just making sure that there's some business and some logic and some accountability behind it as well. So she's excellent.
So like a creative puppet master.
She's like a little package on steroid, basically. And then she speaks very fast as well. She's like, getting sun. But precisely.
I love that. Well, I greatly enjoyed the few emails that I got from her. They were very, concise and to the point and organized. I was like, I love this person already. There's so much information there.
Yeah.
That is really a skill not a lot of people can pull off. Sadly.
Well, and Lindsay knows how to work with creatives, and she doesn't get frustrated, and she can remind you of a deadline without making it feel like an ominous threat hanging over your head, like in a way that it's a real balance to be able to remind somebody that they have something due at a certain point without making it feel like anything other than just a gentle reminder that you need to get cracking.
Well, then we need to invite Lindsay here too, and that will be a special episode, working with creatives. How to cotton candy their world. So what other people do you have on the team that you work with?
Luke Clark. So Luke Clark still partly working he's still working for Newman Agency, but he also sometimes the producer for Never Too Small, and he's definitely the producer for our recent documentary series called Small Footprint. I'm not sure if you watch it on our YouTube channel yet.
No, I haven't watched that one yet. That has to go on the watch list.
Yeah, so last year we got a grant from Screen Australia and YouTube to produce this documentary series, Small Footprint. So it's more about how urban planning is important for our growing cities, and then how small footprint design sort of plays such an important role in growing our cities without overcrowding. And it's a very thought-provoking series, but we want to make it quite digestible for a lot of people who has no design background, something that's engaging through showcasing small, cleverly designed small apartments, to slowly introducing them to how urban planning works in an overarching way. So
I have to ask though, I know I just asked a different question, but you're reminding me of one thing that I'm totally curious about. How is the Australian lifestyle or architecture market that this topic specifically, because you mention it, or almost every architect in your series mentions it, that it's important to have an ecological mindset and to sort of make the best out of buildings that are already there, to make a smaller footprint. Is that a very hot topic in Australia for some reason? Or is that something that comes from your own interest? I
think these topics is always linger within the design community itself, like the architects or interior design community or urban planners communities. But for a public perspective point of view, we don't often hear these kind of ideas or this kind of philosophy using older buildings. And for Australia, especially for Melbourne, let's say I should start a bit more behind, which is for Melbourne CBD itself. Before that, it's just a central border district, so hardly anyone lived in the CBD. So in 1980s, the council decided to move people back to the to make people live in the CBD as like a village, and then they have this project is called Postcode 3000, which is they want to increase residents who live in the CBD and work in the CBD.
Briefly, can you explain what CBD is for all our non-Australian listeners?
It's a central border district, which is
central business district.
Central business district, which is a place where you only have office building. There's no one living in there.
Okay. So it's sort of like merging the suburbs more into the business areas and creating like hybrid spaces, that kind of thing?
If in the state, for example, in Melbourne, even Sydney, if you drive in, you'll go from a 20-kilometre ring out of Melbourne, which is quite large land sizes and large packets of land, maybe 500, 600 square metres. You'll move into the inner suburbs about 10 kilometres away. and you'll sort of get your smaller pockets of land, and maybe there's some very expensive larger houses, but smaller sort of 300, 200 square metre blocks of land. And then you hit the CBD, the Central Business District, and it's just office towers. And it's been designed,
I get it. Yeah,
it's been designed just to house business, really.
Yeah, it's like the inner city, basically, in European cities. Okay, I get it. Okay, thanks. Well then,
but it's not like looking at Melbourne from across the river, like from the inner suburbs. It's not like Paris where there's no really high buildings or anything like that, or even like a lot of European cities actually just they've had limitations on how high you can go, or there's a uniformity around the height of the building. Melbourne and Sydney are both like you hit that sort of 2 square kilometre zone, and it's just really, really tall buildings.
Okay, it's like hitting a wall, basically.
In the entire landscape of Melbourne.
Okay, I see. Okay, well, that makes it clear. Then, Colin, go.
Yeah, sorry. Probably Joe's explained better than I do. So they wanted to bring people back and live in the city, so all the businesses can thrive. Not only before that, all the people go home at 5 o'clock, and the whole CBD become a dead space. There's no activities here. So they started with, in 1985, with 635 residents in the cities, and then they have a mission to grow to 5,000 by 15 years. I think 50,000, I think. But somehow...
Sounds like a lot.
But somehow by 15 years later, until today, there are about over 30,000 apartments in the cities. And then because in European countries, it's very different because you guys sort of more common to live in an apartment within the city's area. And then you have all the lives downstairs with the market and better streets than Melbourne for sure back in the
there's this weird Australian dream of having to have a house and having to have a backyard and having to have a pool, and it feels slightly antiquated, like it's like sort of like the 50s, the United States 50s suburbia dream, and that's transferred to Australia here as well, and there's still a lot of people who consider success or a great home for their families to be that big piece of land and that it's freestanding house and things like that.
Yeah, that's interesting.
It's not sustainable, and that's and even I think when you talk to people, it's research in the book as well, like talking to people in London and the US and in Australia as well. The construction industry is responsible for a huge amount of environmental pollution every year, and the whole point is we don't need to keep building new places. We don't need to keep spreading further. We can be a lot smarter and a lot cleverer through the way we choose to live in the inner city, and beautiful design makes that a reality. Like actually really thinking about the space and how we can get the most out of it, and Never Too Small is there to celebrate that. And that's Colin. That's what he's built.
I guess that Australia and the America or North America are still very close culturally, because in Europe you do have, I think, bigger families. It is the dream to go a little in the suburbs, or the suburbs are really close here. It's not like the traditional American or Australian suburb probably, which is farther away, but here it's like, I don't know, a 10-minute drive or something in most metropoles, and to have a house there. But a lot of people own in the cities their apartments, like even families and everything. They're family-friendly neighborhoods. But from what you're saying, it's much more, I like the way you said it, 50s America vibe. And okay. So it's a very different setting, and that's why the topic always comes up, because obviously in the industry, it's such a ongoing topic since the 80s, from what I understand. The whole use what's there, enrich the inner city.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
Oh.
Cool. And as well, it's not necessarily, don't knock something down and build something new in the same spot that's going to house, potentially the same amount of people, because it's an incredible waste. There's beautiful shells of buildings that with really well built, and they may not be the ideal floor plan to how we're used to living right now, right? But they were the right floor plan for, when everyone had to have their own bedroom many years ago. But
well, I guess in one point, like when they first started putting back people in here, there were so many old buildings, like old warehouses, which is have a good structures, but back in the days, people design the buildings, they still have good ventilations at some point. So it's easy for them to dissect the older buildings into loft apartments. And then what the city councils do here to introduce Australians to that kind of apartment living by having this tour. Every couple of days, they're having this tour bringing people from the suburbs to come to the cities and visit some of the loft apartments that they have in mind. So that's what's happening back in the... Yeah, so they introduce them to the apartment living because Australians are so used to the suburbia kind of living lifestyle.
Kind of like an urban exchange program.
Yeah. And if for me to know, like, there's a lot of talk of using older buildings, or especially after pandemic, people thinking there are so many empty offices and people can build more apartments. For me, it's a yes and no, because after talking to so many designers, some of the newer office building, they're not designed with windows in mind because everything's air conditioning. And then that is why it's hard to create the ventilations. And then it could be more costly to redo the office building into the apartment than to rebuild the whole thing again. So there's a balance there that we need to consider. As well as we also realize that as Melbourne city itself become more expensive and pushing a lot of artists out, because Melbourne used to be cheaper and there's more creative people in the city itself. And then they got driven out because there are more apartment buildings being built. The investors just keep buying it. They have overseas investors buying it, and then they drive the price so expensive, the rent so expensive, and the creative people move out. And they sort of lower down the vibrancy of the city itself being the creative cities. Melbourne used to have these subcultures of creative people, all these small galleries, they're slowly disappearing.
And there were creative cities on the fringes. There were on the fringes of the city. There was like Collingwood and Fitzroy and St Kilda, which are all 5 kilometres out from the central business district, but were incredible hubs of creative energy. That's where.
Yeah, but they're not there anymore, or are they?
Expensive.
Sorry.
They're
not there anymore.
Even
or? We have a lag.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Colin.
But to buy a home, it costs $1.5 million.
Yeah. So what the cities has a plan to do now is after this, the empty offices building in the city, they trying to make it affordable again, welcome the creative people back to the cities. And I think that's brilliant, because I think Melbourne does lose its magical touch, which used to be these subcultures, a lot of art galleries kind of vibes. So disappearing for the last 10 years when I live here. So hopefully after this, they will start bringing the people back. And then we need to create a balance between creative people, sustainable living, exciting footpaths and more activities in the cities, because I do believe city become livable when it's vibrant and exciting, Yes. There's no point if you're just having towers of apartments and just apartments everywhere without any kind of creative things going on. It's need that vibe.
Yeah, that's sort of like hybrid nature of working and living parallel, and raising your kids and maybe having a park. And one thing I love about the European cities is, or most of them have really a lot of parks, a lot of try to create recreational, non-productive areas, I'm going to call them. I don't know what the architectural term is. Georgi is the architect.
Over here we call that lazy land.
Oh, lazy land. Okay, that takes it a step further. Non-productive sounds even efficient in some way.
The village square as well is something that's in European cities, and it doesn't exist in Australia. No. We try to do it sometimes. I've seen an attempt at a village square in Prahran, actually, which is a suburb in Melbourne recently, but it's just this concrete. It's like they've just poured concrete to show where the village square starts and ends.
Sort of like an empty pool or something like that.
It's like an empty pool, and in summer, Melbourne summer can get to like 42, 43 degrees. It's hot. Like there's not people relaxing about it. I think that's one of the things that European cities do so well, is that the community and the communal spaces, and they sort of seem to happen naturally. It's like when you try to force it, you've got to design around where the people congregate, not try to create the space and hope the people congregate there.
Yeah, that's one of the things I learned from listening actually to a lot of our guests and from being my partner is an architect, that you actually have to first look and see what the flow is, be it the flow of light or the flow of people or the flow of, the natural flow of the air, even if we're talking about ventilation, like you mentioned, Colin. And then you have to sort of use that instead of imposing it or trying to redirect it, which is very much, I feel like, an 80s and 90s approach to be it building, living, planning a city or even an apartment. And you really have to see what's there first.
Yeah. And 10 or 15 years ago, when the apartments market is so booming in Australia, the way they market apartments in Melbourne is really just like the 5-star luxury hotel kind of living. And then I just find that so absolutely outdated. And now as we progress, and I think as public get their hand on information how sustainable living is, and also more ideas of what a good city should look like, and then they much more appreciate like the modern buildings where you have the green facade at the front, and then what's the what sort of energies the building is using, and then they know how to recognize how a good design apartment should look like. Back in the days, we get marketed to this kind of poor floor plan design apartments in the cities. That's what they have. So I think Never Too Small play an important role, where we're not only showing how old building can done up beautifully and make it livable, but we're slowly introducing how a good apartment building should be designed in the future as well. And then not just offering people swimming pools that you only get used once a week in a small swimming pool that cannot fit even 10 people.
I used to live in an apartment like that, Colin.
Yeah, and then
it was awful.
Why don't we just build like a flat garden for people to take their kids upstairs and play, or their dogs to roam around, where you can create neighbors can meet neighbors, and then they create the connections, the community feeling of it. So
so you really embody,
that hopefully we can introduce to our audience in the future as well.
So I'm hearing you really embody that whole concept, which I have to say you really bring out in the videos really, really well. It's like I recently, actually a few days ago, I saw the newest one on Paris, which I was like, oh, it's an EU city. That's so that's so cool. They're usually like, obviously Australia or New Zealand based cities from the videos that I saw, and it was the Paris flat. And I was actually looking at how you produce the videos and how you do the shots. And what I found was really cool was that it's actually very simple. I have the impression that how the videos are. There's nothing like fancy, like we're going to go with a drone and we're going to go up and below, and I don't know what. Can you walk us through like a typical video shoot? Because I've been on like mid-sized advertising shoots in Iceland, which are obviously probably nothing compared to what you do. But
wow,
yeah, that was the whole drone thing.
I want to hear more about that at some point, please, Désirée.
It was a deliberate decisions how I film Never Too Small, because back in the days, and when you look at YouTube, everyone's doing the same thing. Everyone loves the drone shots or the sliding shots or the roaming shots. Everyone get the roaming kits they have. But then when I look at it, I thought they all have a good design as well. But if I want to show like the best design on YouTube, I need to catch people's attention. If I do the same thing of me introducing the apartment and then the architects just walk us around for 1 hour and 20 minutes, I can easily film that in 20 minutes and then I can go home and say bye-bye. But the thing is, I'm thinking, like the way I practice my thing is that I have a Chinese idiom. I keep telling myself, you'd rather be a single red flower in a thick green foliage. So people notice that. You.
That's beautiful. That's beautiful.
Yeah. So I like to do things a bit differently, even though it's not massively different. But I just want people to catch people playing Never Too Small, and boom, it's nothing you see on YouTube. And then I'm also a lazy person, to be honest. I don't like to carry a lot of gear when I go shooting.
Now we're getting to the core of it. First he comes with the red flower, and now.
Yeah, and I limit myself with one tripod and one camera and one mic. So I can put everything in my backpack and then I can go.
What kind of camera do you have? Is it like, what kind of camera do you have? I have like 1,000 cameras in mind right now. What do you use?
Usually we just use our studio camera, which is a C300 Mark II, and occasionally I might use Blackmagic if I go overseas. It's just smaller and then easy to put in my backpack.
Oh, okay.
And then I can run away if people chase me. Yeah.
Which obviously happens a lot.
Yeah, so when I limit myself with that few equipment, I have to think of a way, how can I film it still nicely? So I look at a lot of paintings in galleries. And then in 2014, I took a trip to London, and then that really inspired me because I saw an artist, I can't remember her name, but she just filmed her house just still for 15 minutes. And I just thought, that's so therapeutic looking at that video. It's just like one shot.
That's where my Zen comes from. Yes, that's why Zen.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know what, Désirée, when you said before, they give you a sort of Zen, and that's feedback we hear all the time about the videos. And if there was, as Cole said before, there were zooms and there were dollies and things like that, you wouldn't get that. I got a message today from someone on Instagram saying, I started doing a list of what makes me happy. One of them is your videos. They give me a calmness not even my antidepressants can give. And
really? I didn't see it.
Yeah, yeah, it's on Instagram, Cole. You'll be able to see it.
I'll feel it.
That's something we hear all the time about people, and it's not because we're necessarily shooting anything, revolutionary or anything like that. It's just the fact that Cole's made a deliberate decision to make these still and let the apartment be the hero. And you don't see a lot of that. You see a lot of, hey, yo, my name's Mikey, subscribe here, and
or the higher end stuff. Yeah, with like you say, the pans and I don't know, we're gonna roll it there, and then we're gonna zoom out of there, and then we're gonna do a half curve shot, and and the
reality is there's often not enough room to really do those big moves anyway. They're
small
sub
apartments.
50 square meters. It's how much.
It's actually those still shots. Actually, those still shots for a small place is actually quite hard to create, to be honest. But then I guess by looking at that video, I realized that I put so much attention to the details of the room, and in a way, when we do that, like still shot, people tend to appreciate the design more, and we have to do justice for the designer's work. We cannot put ourselves at the front saying how much good camera skill we have, because if we want to do, we really can do it because we're a video agency. But then it's to have the respect put back to the designers and really showcasing their videos with just a simple composition but well framed. And it's like looking through a photographer's eye who's doing architecture's photography, but in the video form. And then you can see the models come in, open the cupboard, and walk off. There's nothing fancy there.
Yeah, and you do have the one pan with when the cabinets are open. It's like you have the closed and then they have the open, which is also very, very calm. I like the word calm too. Yeah, it's very calm. It does. I love the way you're saying it. The architecture photography meets a moving image format. You can't even call it a video, really. It's actually like bringing those two.
It's a moving image. Yeah. It's a combining of the two, I guess. And then, and then the music, I deliberately choose slow music because when I watched that video, happened to be that time I was really into Philip Glass music. So the two combined, clash, and then we get Never Too Small style. So Never Too Small style, for the first episode to what now, it's actually really evolved a little bit. We get more about the neighborhood story into it because I realized that neighborhood plays such an important role of the interior design as well as the building history itself. And so we're slowly adding up those shots into the stories that we create and then get the audience a bit more richer experience when they watched it. Even though we can't tell every single detail of the stories, but they still get the idea, the gist out of it. And it's a combining of storytelling, a bit of entertainment value, which is the calm effects, and then relaxing thing. I call it entertainment value. And then at the end of the day, when you watch it, it's like you're listening to a really nice Philip Glass music, and you come out and then it's like back to the reality. So it's like an escapism in a way, and then back to the reality.
And then you see beautiful architecture and interior design too.
Of course, yeah.
So that calms you too, yeah. So what kind of skill? And
then you get the knowledge out of it,
Yeah. What kind of skills did you where you say you learned, which you brought to the Never Too Small project, and what skills do you see that you've evolved through Never Too Small?
In what way? Sorry, Désirée.
Either in video editing or that you looked at, I don't know, the project in a more holistic way. How have your skills evolved through the journey in the last few years?
Well, I'm not from any kind of interior architecture background, but throughout these 4 years making Never Too Small, I learned quite a lot from the designer architects themselves. But of course, I do read some books and watch more design videos and stuff. And in terms of the skill evolved in Never Too Small video itself, I think we will still continue making design videos like the Never Too Small episodes, but eventually I want to sort of transfer what I learned along the way, meeting all these different designers and architects, into a more educational videos. And then hopefully in the future, I want to create videos that can teach people how to design their small spaces through the architects and interior designers themselves, like really through them, instead of me telling the audience what to do and what I learned. But it's more through I'm taking them a journey with me in it, and then we're going to meet the designer, architects, and then we talk about design. And then maybe I always have in mind of I want to make a video about revisit some of the old design that's really popular, and then get the architects to really dissect the design process from step one to the finished product. Yeah. Because I'm sure design doesn't like come for the first draft and then you get the finish. It's more like through a couple drafts, and then what sort of problem they have when they build this tiny apartment, and then how they answer the client's brief, and also how the architects charge, or what's the benefit of getting an interior designer or architects involved in renovating your apartment. Because I think a lot of audience, they keep saying they don't know what architects can do. If you watch this video, you can do it yourself. Why do you hire an architect? That's also the conversation I would like to have.
As soon as you have to tear down a wall, I don't know. I'm a little iffy about doing it myself.
Yeah.
So, but you've gone away from video in the past year, or not away. You've branched out into publishing, I saw, and this is actually a rather new development. When did so you brought out a book? Period. Let's let that sink in. How did that happen? Why?
I let Joe take the stage. No, come, Joe.
Have you always wanted to do a book? Because I've always wanted to publish some kind of pretty book.
It was not on my bucket list actually, but we got approached by a publisher called Smith Street Publishing, which is shout out to Paul McNally, which is based in Collingwood, which is a bit of a creative hub in Melbourne. And he came and chatted to us and said, "Hey, some of what you do would make a wonderful book." And I was newly just working with the team at that point, and and it was something I know that Cole had. I don't know. It was your bucket list, wasn't it, Cole? Like you wanted your book to be in the Tate Modern Museum at some point. I don't think you were ever.
Wow, that's a very small goal you got there.
Yeah.
Paul approached us in February 2020, but in November 2019, I was in Tate Modern. I actually went there every year, end of year, and then I went to their gift shop. They call it the gift shop. The souvenir shop they have there. Yeah. And then I look at all these architecture books. I'm like, I really want to one day have a Never Too Small book here. And boom, February, he approaches. And then when we have the first cup of coffee, sit together, and then Paul, they ask, what do you want to get out of it? And they say if we would like to have a book published. And I said, only if you promise me we're going to have a copy in Tate Modern, and then just do whatever we need to get the book out.
So we're working on getting a copy in Tate Modern. That's what I'm hearing right now.
Yeah. Well, we're just gonna travel there and slip one in. We might even send you one, Désirée. You're a bit closer to us, so
exactly.
But I heard Cole, his enthusiasm for it, and I love making beautiful things, and I love writing as well. So I said, I have to write that book. I really want to write it. And I'd been working, on the website, and just writing long form articles for the site, and looking after the digital media. And I knew I wanted to write that book, so I said, put my hand up, and let's start working on it. And about a quarter of the way in, I realized, because and one of the things with the book, Désirée, is it goes. It's not just a it's not just a photographic coffee book. It really goes into the neighborhoods, and it really tries to understand, what the designers, I guess, what they walked in, what they saw from a shell of an apartment, what their journey was from going from, okay, this is a place that can be transformed, and as you said before, there's available light here, and there's airflow here, and how do they create the perfect space using what's actually not a whole lot of stuff, but they turn it into something that's really livable. And so we also, as Colin touched on before, like the neighborhood, like what's the actual historical context of how this building came to be, and why is it, in a bit of a zeitgeist right now for this place to be a beautiful, home for the residents and the community for people as well. So it really explores in detail all those aspects. As I got more and more into it, I need to really shout out my colleague and co-writer here, Liz. I went, there's too much to write here. Like there's a lot of information here, and so Liz very kindly, who was part of the New McPherson team as well, jumped in and wrote half of it for me. We split the book up, and we
how many pages? How many pages is it?
Oh, it's
because I saw on Instagram it's thick. I mean,
yeah, it is thick.
Oh, okay. Oh, that's nice. Both have the books by their side and are now flipping.
295.
Oh, wow.
With detailed floor plans and detailed stories around every apartment, and it's interesting as well. Like some of the stories, for me, the buildings that they live in are actually more interesting than the actual apartment. Like, I don't know if you know the Barbican building in London, which is a brutalist.
It was an experimental project.
Experimental project, but it houses 3,000 people. It's actually the biggest in the city of London. It houses the majority of the city of London's residents in that one building.
Wow!
But it's so divisive, that building, because a lot of people absolutely hate it. But people who live there and people who like brutalist architecture, and a lot of creators absolutely love it. It's actually one of the hottest tickets in all of London to get an apartment there. There's a waiting list, and you get the key to the Barbican. And
Barbican or Barbican?
Yeah,
Barbican.
It's my accent. It's Barbic. It's a Barbican.
If don't get me started on. I don't want to start American slanging on my accent. Will probably be the same. So
Barbican. It's
okay. I have to check that. We'll put that in the links. But brutalist architecture. Yeah. Wow.
But yeah, for that, I love that building too, Cole. It's so beautiful. And for me, the story was as much about that actual building as even more so than the apartment within. So in writing that book, I guess my journalist background really allowed me to identify the story for every single apartment, as opposed to just a traditional coffee table book, which is just like, you walk in the door and you see this and you see that. And I think that's why
it's such an interesting complex, because you have a concert hall in there as well, and then you have schools, music schools, and then in the middle they have like a water pond in the middle with plants growing on it, and then they have like private gardens, and then they have cafeterias, and they have the bridge, the theater and the concert hall, and then they have the bridge that connect the two sides of the buildings together.
So it's really
you have to check it out.
So it's really basically taking what we said before with Australia, with creating spaces that are more hybrid into a much smaller space, into this.
Absolutely. And right underneath the building is actually a tunnel for the cars.
Oh, okay. Oh, wow, cool. I have to check that out.
And it's just grey concrete. It's like classic brutalist in that but it's so interesting to look at.
So how long did it? Because I imagine if I would dig into that whole, because what you're saying is that you're looking for connections also between the spaces and where they are and the apartment and the interior and also the bigger picture. I would fall down every rabbit hole endlessly. It would probably take years to write that book. How long did it take you to get all this together and, put a package for the publisher?
It took Liz and I about I think a good 6 months during lockdown. Like Melbourne was in lockdown last year, so there wasn't a lot of stuff to do other than write books at night, right?
But 6 months is not a lot, right? I mean, 295 pages. You have to go and probably take the pictures again because you can't, screenshot
that's where
the
Lindsay,
video.
who we were talking about, Lindsay came in. She'd never worked on a book before, but she's Never Too Small's video producer. But she jumped in and she chased down the releases from the architects, and she got the architectural photos and all those things. So she was
get all the floor plans, redraw.
So she just left. Yeah. We got all the floor plans, and architects use many different styles of doing their floor plans.
Yeah.
We got all the floor plans. We created them all in a uniform style and all to scale as well. So
we purposely
through
put human figurine in there just so you get an idea how big the space is, and then we make sure if the picture's got a dog, we put a dog in there. Sometimes we put a cat in there. If the owner's got a cat, we put the cats in the floor plan as well.
We went back and forth over what the right figure postures were and whether or not they should be crossing their legs or leaning back, or how many figures we should put in. And it was so much.
Size of the sink. Very detailed things.
And then we had that moment right at the end where we realised some things weren't to scale, so we got everything back into scale, and it was. Well, I learned so much during that. I think what I learned.
Sorry, Joel. Sorry, go ahead.
I think some of the things I learned more than anything else is that I want to do it again. I want to keep doing it because there was nothing like receiving a hard copy at the end.
I saw that. Did you cry? You can tell. I can tell.
I cried. Of course.
Colin, did you cry?
There's nothing like having people send videos like on Never Too Small's Instagram, showing them receiving the book and opening it up and knowing that you're sitting in someone's living room there, and it's such a wonderful, wonderful feeling.
You're making me all touchy-feely now too. I'm a very sensitive person. I'm like sitting here going as if it were my book. Oh my god!
And you know what?
You could tell your mom.
Yeah.
You can tell your mom that the books is available in Waterstone in London now.
You know what? To just get a little bit more touchy-feely as well. Like my dad passed away late last year, and he knew I was making this book, and he was very proud of me. And I got to send it to my mum, and she opened it, and here's a tear bit. She was like, "Oh my God, your dad would have loved this so much. He would have sat there, and he would have had a huge smile on his face as he read it." And I don't know, it's something tangible, and you put out in the world, and it makes me feel wonderful.
It shows how much important the tangible and the book as is because if you think about it, producing a video, bringing people together, creating pictures, digital pictures, whatever the motive is also a huge achievement in itself, and to have all these followers or this huge audience, and then you have made a book and it's suddenly
to the audience, to be honest,
different.
right, Joe?
Absolutely, yeah.
The audience is the most. That's what we are here for, is our audience, to be honest. Without them, there's no Never Too Small for sure. And now, we do have some really supportive audience that's always there for us. And then when the books come out, they're so well received, and then
so well received, and people have been so kind and so supportive, and they send the loveliest messages, and it's we do write a message in the book just saying, without the first 100 people who sort of liked what this guy in Melbourne was putting up on YouTube, and then without obviously the critical mass that followed, none of this would be real. I don't want to get too Oscar's speech here, but it's it's a love letter to our audience to say thank you for the support, and here's something beautiful that you can here's a piece of Never Too Small that you can have in your living room and keep forever.
So you mentioned a few things that you learned from publishing the book. What were some of the most difficult things that, I don't know, people just don't think about when they think about publishing a book? Because it sounds so romantic in a way. You write and you take a year off and you send it to the publisher and then it goes out, period.
So
that's what it's
really
like, right?
Question. For me, Colin, you'll have your own views on this. For me, it was, having actually worked with an editor whose job it is to make it successful and readable, and you think you can write well, but then having, an editor, comment on your doc saying, this is, what does she say? What was the word Talia used a lot with me? he's like verbose, flowery.
Yes.
And like you read it again, and you're like, "What the hell was I thinking writing that? That's the worst writing ever."
And this coming from a journalist, everybody. This coming from an actual writing pro.
Yeah. But that editing process was it was thrilling, and I loved it. But it was hard. Because there were big sections which needed a rewrite, and you sort of like you've written that chapter, you've put it to bed, you've had your baby, you've put it out in the world, and then it comes back to you, and it's like it needs to be better, and you've got to look at it and look at a story in an entirely different way again.
Yeah,
and reconfigure it.
The ego takes a bit of a hit too, doesn't it? Especially if you come from a writing profession. Was there like a thought like, "Oh, I suck at my job," or I don't know. I'm not as good as I thought.
Imposter syndrome. I've got as much imposter syndrome as any other creative. So yes, of course.
Okay. Yes, so that was tough.
Yeah. But Liz, who I co-wrote the book with, and came in to make sure that we got it done, was an exceptional person to bounce things off, and she was also very generous. She was like, "I love how you write, Joel, and I feel really lucky to be part of this." So she made me feel good about it, as well as doing a lot of the heavy lifting to actually get it done. I think I learned a lot about my own creative process around when I'm at my best, and to hark back to one of my favorite authors, Ernest Hemingway. It was just get up and write, just start writing, and it will end up coming to you. And it's so true. I procrastinate as much as any other creative out there, but you just got to get started.
Did you develop a routine too, like 6 hours a day I'm going to write starting at 8 a.m. or whatever?
Yeah, I was working, like I said, my business got acquired by Accenture, so I was working full-time during the day in that business, and at night I was writing these chapters. And
oh, wow, okay.
I'd be writing till 1, 2 o'clock in the morning, and depending on, sometimes it would absolutely flow, and I'd try to get through a story a day. Other times it would be, I've got to go to bed now.
But don't want to be a bit cheesy, right, Joe? If you're doing something that you like, you don't feel as bad.
But you still need sleep, don't you? You had 6 months basically where you had no sleep, right? That's what it sounds like.
I throw in with all of that, Désirée, homeschooling as well. Like our kids, the schools are all shut down in Melbourne, so we're homeschooling. It was just a bit of a chaotic time in Melbourne at the time. It was a bit of a scary time as well. It was our first lockdown. No one quite knew exactly what was going to happen with COVID, and I was working all day, writing at night, and yeah, it was intense, but we got it done.
What was another thing, Colin, that you say you learned through publishing the book compared to video and moving images and digital?
Well, I'm mostly involved in floor plan design and choosing the apartments for the book. And so what do I learn? I've learned pretty much the same thing with Joe, I guess, because when Joe's talking to Talia the first couple of times, I was in the talk as well and realized that you need to have that unified voice in all the articles that you write. And I guess I'm learning a lot from creating floor plan because how to scale things that at first we thought is not as important, but come back to be really important, and we have to re-juggle everything and refix everything again. And also the decision of whether to put a human figure in the floor plan or not. And most of the people saying, "Oh, you don't need it, just have a normal floor plan like the architects provide." But then we realized that if to put a figure in it, sometimes one person, sometimes two person, it creates life within the floor plan. It becomes more like an artwork. And then Joe's quite insist of having the figure as well. And then sometimes we have people reading on the sofa, but when you look at the human figure, you know how big the place is, because sometimes floor plan doesn't do any kind of really good, give you a good judgment of how big the space is, but the figurine would, and little things like this. Yeah.
So your dimensional
more
thinking.
than anything else, Désirée, for me, it's the biggest thing I learned was say yes to stuff. If somebody asked me in 2019, do you think you would have published a book on small footprint sustainable architecture, I would have said, well, that's obviously ridiculous. But I'm so glad I did. I'm so glad I said yeah. I'm so glad I put my hand up and said I actually really want to do this. And yeah, there were hard times, but most of it was amazing, and I'm so proud. I'm so proud of it. It makes me happy every time I look at it. So a second book
is on the way, probably, because you're still in lockdown. So I mean, And you're coming on full time, Joel, so you have time, right?
That's right. And my kids think I'm cool. One of my kids told somebody the other day on one of their Zoom classes, my dad's a writer. And I was like, yeah, I'm a writer.
Oh, that is so cool. That makes you proud of yourself too, like in a completely new way. It's like, forget the imposter syndrome. My kid thinks I'm Superman.
That's right.
That is so cool. I was thinking before when Colin, when you mentioned, starting with Never Too Small, and I don't know, and we've talked about things that were difficult in publishing, and what I love to talk about, which a lot of creatives don't want to talk about, is what are the things that they failed at, and what are the things that, one or two things that both of you, where you say, this is where I really failed along the way, and this is what I learned from it, because that's something nobody ever shares, really. I mean, like the real honest to truth. I mean, there's failing like, oh, I'm a perfectionist, the usual things you say. But what is one thing where you say that just didn't work? And do you have anything?
I guess, I got to think about that one for a bit. It's not that we're successful all the way. There are so many things that I tried and didn't work out in terms of how I would like to sort of create more content for TikToks, which I did a few, and then I just thought it's not quite the right audience for us. And there's not really any major mistakes so far just yet. And then I wish I would give more love to the audience at the beginning of the channel for the first year, because the first year I totally ignored the audience because I just came to YouTube. Before that, I never made any sort of YouTube channels before, so it was a totally new experience for me. Sorry,
how are you connecting with the audience now? What are you doing different after the first year? What's the difference?
So I guess we get more involved in getting the audience, our viewers, to make the decision together with us in terms of choosing the thumbnails. We will put a community post on YouTube and then let them help us to choose. And Joe did a really good Instagram managing the post on Instagram as well. And then also I'm trying to reply as many comments as I can on YouTube, from especially those who compliment us or show their support and saying, I'll watch your video for how long. And then and also a lot of fan mails that I get through LinkedIn or my Facebook page, and then also sometimes I don't know where to get a private
people outside his home, people waving at him from the street at his balcony. I think we've really lifted Cole's profile over the last few months as well. I think for a while, Never Too Small was just a bit of a faceless brand. Obviously a lot of Cole's friends and close people close to his circle knew what he was doing, and they were very supportive. But I think there was a bit of a conscious decision over the last few months to really let people know that there's a person behind this.
Throw me out there. Now I'm exposed.
Well, every brand needs a figurehead, right? And what a wonderful figurehead Chee makes.
Well, because in the end, it's like you said, you live from your audience, and that's a person-to-person relationship, actually, or it should be. And you have to. Yeah, I think that's one of the things also that creatives are very timid about, to put themselves out there with a face. And I don't know this from myself. I'm totally on behind the scenes and working and being, forward pushing. And then it's like, oh, why don't you be part of this interview on this topic? And I'm like, no. I know all this stuff. Can I give it to you in writing?
I'm trying to I'm trying to keep telling myself I'm in the same boat as my audience, because we all live in the small spaces. Yeah. And then I represent them to go and seek for the answers, the question they have. So I'm trying to put myself together with the audience. So I'm just take the lead, help them to find the answers they want. So that's how I keep telling myself, I'm
you're credible too. Also, it's if we look at it strategically, it's about, they believe you because you're actually, listening to you talk just shows that you're in the topic of small space living and small footprints and yes.
And I live in one.
Yes, and you live in one. Obviously, we're still waiting for the house tour.
To answer your question about failure, Désirée, for me, I'm highly conscious of the fact that I'm doing things right now creatively that in 5 years' time I'm going to look back at and go, oh God, what were you thinking? Because that's been the one consistent through my entire career. I look back at the first website I ever designed and it makes me shudder. And I look back at the first video I ever made and I'm like, what was I thinking? And there's failures along the way, right? And some of them you don't even know they're failing at the time. Some of them you think they're good. Some of them you think they're not. There haven't been any huge, like, get out of the building, that's a horrible thing, or anything that I'm deeply ashamed of. But I'm also aware of the fact that, as a creative, you're constantly improving. And if you're not, then what are you doing, right? Like, you're getting better at what you do. So you'll always look back and you always go, oh my God, I've come so far. But the bit that really kills me, that kills me is like knowing right now the things I'm doing, I'm going to look back at in 5 years' time and go, oh, a bit cringy. And
But I think that's humbling, isn't it? Isn't it humbling to just, because usually you're in the moment and you're like, oh, I'm doing this. This is so awesome. I am so awesome. I totally got this. So actually what you're doing is you're humbling yourself and preparing yourself for feedback then to yourself in a way.
That's right.
For improvement, I guess. Well, at least, I guess for me always, I always have this thought of, because I get asked the same question, the failure. And then I always think of, the worst failure is I never try, and then I never try, I fail. At least I try. If I fail means that I try. So it's not.
But
as
it's
bad.
easier said than done, right? I mean.
Yeah. So I did try many things for Never Too Small. It didn't work. Like our Facebook page didn't work. Didn't work, but not as vibrant as it should be, or more activities as it should be. And little things like this. But for me, if anyone's that's really failing, is the one that never tried. At least if you try and know how to fix it, and then you get it right. Yeah. And then for me, it's just a learning process. A lot of things. Yeah.
Joel, you mentioned that you built a company and you sold it to Accenture, which whoever doesn't know Accenture, they're a big digital consulting company. I would say. I think I would put them under that umbrella. And so you must have transitioned from a completely different role that you had at, you said Loud and Scream was the name?
Loud and Clear.
Loud and Clear, yeah. To what you're doing at Never Too Small now. How was, from where to where did you go? And how did that feel in a way? Because that sounds intense.
It's a good question. It's a long story. I'll try to condense it for you. So I'm still at Accenture at this point as well. Like we're in a I'm still an employee there. So we grew our business to 180 people in Australia. We became Australia's largest independent digital agency. We were acquired by Accenture 3 years ago, and I guess for me, Never Too Small is the thing that offsets that mass corporation and high enterprise digital transformation work that I do, and allows me to be purely creative and really fill my bucket, for one of the better.
It is a startup, right? Startup, we can experiment with anything that we want at the moment. Yeah.
That's right. I jump on the weekly with the Never Too Small crew, and I feel my creative bucket filled. And without that,
you feel young again.
But Colin, Joel is young. We're all young. We're all young at heart.
It makes me happy. It makes me happy. Colin, the team, Never Too Small team is so wonderful and so excited, and we're doing something that an audience laps up, just absolutely loves, and it makes them calm and it makes them feel good. And we're educating people, and we're talking a message of sustainability and really a brighter day. We know what the construction industry does from an environmental point of view, something that actually, inspires people and creates a better world, and it makes me, it fills my cup.
It goes to show how important a mission is.
If you don't mind, I also want to shout out to our international film crews that we're working with. And without them, there wouldn't be any episodes in Paris or,
so you don't go yourself to Paris. Somebody does that for you.
We used to, Désirée, but COVID.
Yeah, that makes sense.
We couldn't travel.
Yeah, I didn't think about that. Yeah.
So you might have noticed a period where there was a few more Australian episodes for a while.
Yes, I actually thought it was a purely Australian focus for a while. Well, there was a Brazilian episode, I think, or Mexico.
There's been Argentina.
Yeah.
There's been Spain. There's been
no, France,
Italy. A few in Italy.
And France.
A couple in France.
Yeah.
London.
It used to be. Prior to lockdown, it used to be like mostly me filming around and traveling to Italy and UK and stuff like that. But after lockdown, we just stuck here. We can't go anywhere. And then even the city itself is locked down. So what we have to do is we have to change our strategy on how to produce more episodes to our audience. So what we do is starting to develop another format, which is it's still Never Too Small style. It's still interviewed by me. So it's still my vision because what we do is we will find the right design. Let's say I find this apartment today and the architects agree to do it. And what we do is I will send the architects my questions. So the architects will fill in for me my questions. So by looking at the answers, and then I would draw the floor plan of the apartment and start placing cameras. So using my imagination, what the apartments look like. So I place the cameras and number them from 1 to 32 shots. And then I will write the script. Very detailed shot list to the camera guy saying shot 1 is wide lens pointing out from the living room towards the kitchen where the models walks in the shot, opening the cupboards and walks away, hold for 30 seconds. All these single shots they are very detailed and what lens being used, what height, and then everything details is set, we write it. And on the filming day, the videographer will set up the cameras and then he will use either the mobile phone or the laptop, and I will ask the question through like this. We use either Google Meet or WhatsApp call. So I will ask. So the architect's still looking at me, so we'll have the interview session like that. And I usually go for an hour, and then after that, the videographer will start filming the shot list with the shot list. And of course, exterior shots is I would write certain things that I want, but it's up to the videographer to interpret how the exterior shots looks like the neighborhood because they know the neighborhood, they're from there. So they would choose the best represent street for the neighborhood. And that's how we bring it back to Melbourne. And then we have our marvelous editor, Jess, or sometimes me, and then we will put the episodes together. And then we'll do, and then Lindsay or Luke, our producer, would write the description for the episode. And then Joe will do the beautiful Instagram posts, Instagram stories, and then we would all sit down together and choose the thumbnail for each episode. So it's very delicate and detailed process to create one episode.
How long does it take?
It's a long process as well.
Yeah, how long is that process from
finding the apartment?
Yeah, to having everything, uploaded.
It kind of varied because back in the days, it's only either me or our producer, Lindsay, doing the research for the apartment. So it's much harder for us. Now we involve another researcher who is also a big fan for Never Too Small, who contacted me and just wanted to have a conversation with me. She's from New Zealand. Her name
Shout
is
out to Lucy.
Yeah, Lucy. And
I'm back,
she also wrote a book.
Sorry about
that. She also wrote a book.
Yeah, she has written a book.
Yeah. And so it's so much easier now with her doing all the research, and then she would compile like a list of 40 apartments, and then I would look at those designs and then whether this one's suitable or not. And then if suitable, Lucy will contact the architects or the designers and see whether they are interested to participating in our filming, our series. And then if they say yes, and then we'll start sending the answers and the questions and also other questions that we have. And then we have to organize with the owners of the apartments or people who live in it to get access to the apartment. And then we'll start looking for our overseas team. And we now have a really couple good overseas team members like Alessandro from Italy, and then Alan from Hong Kong, and then Fernando in Argentina, and then Michael in Sydney and Simon in New Zealand, who's already worked with me a couple of times, so they kind of see my vision. So I'm quite like confident with them seeing what I see, because if you do a couple of times Never Too Small, it's kind of the same format.
Yeah,
but then it's a different design.
You have a process that just is repeated. Yeah.
yeah, it's kind of lucky I didn't put myself in front of the camera before that. So if if I did, then it's hard to achieve what we achieved today. So that's how we do each episode.
But how much? Yeah. What time frame is that? Is it like 6 weeks? How long in terms of
it could take from like 6 weeks to once we get the episode filmed. It usually takes us about 2 weeks to put it together, including thumbnail selections, description, and Instagram posts, and the articles on websites that Joe writes. Yeah.
The thumbnail descriptions meetings are some of the most exciting meetings on the calendar. There's
really
heavy debate.
Can you expand on that? What's so? Wait, just so I understand, thumbnail description is.
Oh, just thumbnail.
So it's essentially when somebody jumps onto YouTube and they're scrolling through their feed and they choose either yes or no, and our audience who subscribe to us, we know that they'll see what we do and they'll like it, or it will come into their flow eventually. But it's also about growing an audience and making sure that the first thing you show of yourselves is interesting and attractive, right? So and there's so much research and opinion out there around what exactly makes a great thumbnail, like what makes that great entry point. Is it showing a person in an apartment? Is it showing a really visually popping part of the apartment? For example, the Parisian apartment that you just saw recently, it's got this really bold blue room in there. But what we know is that people who necessarily see the blue room get excited might not be the right people who engage with the content. They might just go, oh, that's an interesting blue room, and they'll want to skip ahead to the blue room. So how do we find that image, that single image that shows what we do, what we're about, shows something about the content inside, and if somebody clicks on it,
the cover album.
It shows enough of the promise of what they will see so that they actually stick out and watch the entire thing and hopefully engage with us further. So
crazy how nitty-gritty that is. I mean, you think, I'm just going to shoot a video, I'm going to edit it. Of course, it has to have a cover image and everything, but I mean, we're talking about a thumbnail. In the results, it's okay. Continue. I'm enthralled.
Then there's tests we're running on exactly, do thumbnails work better if they've got a person in them? Do they work better without a person? Is it better to show the outside of the building, the inside of the building? Is it better to show a lot of color, a little bit of color? And it's not just about getting somebody to click, because you actually have to make content that people engage with, and YouTube's algorithm will punish you if people click on it and then they actually don't want to watch it anymore. YouTube will actually say, okay, well, you're tricking people into watching it. So there's all these things you got to balance, like show the promise of what can be, but also deliver the promise of what you've shown as well. And then there's things around the headline as well. Do you show the square meterage up front? Do you show the city location? Do you show the name of the apartment? Do you put never too small in front? And it's enthralling. I think we've probably done as much research as anyone else has out there around what works and what doesn't work, and
I guess your experience.
Recently we're starting to involve our audience to make the decision for choosing the thumbnail for us. We will choose the best two and sometimes the best four, where we have the heated argument. We don't know which one to choose. We just throw it back to the audience and let the audience have the voice, so we feel like they are part of the team as well in a way.
That's cool. Such a big learn for us as well, Désirée. It's like there's a group of 1.8 million people out there who are passionate about what we do, and sometimes we've just got to put our opinions and our ego to the side and ask them. And we get, like our new product range around some of the things we bring into our e-com store. At the moment we're only selling the book, but there's other things that we know our audience is hungry for. Like why go away and try to invent or what you think people need, but there's an audience there who will actually tell you. And so we've been doing a lot more of that. Like, what colors do you like? What sort of brands do you want to see? Like all those things.
We want to show the appreciation that we really value our audience as well. Because of them, there's never too small. So sometimes the creative decision we make, sometimes it's nice to involve them as well. It's more like a democratic, so they feel part of, being heard of as well from us. Not that we totally ignore them. They doesn't exist. So it's nice to involve them as part of the community, because really a lot of them are just like me, who's wanting to, who have the aspiration to live in a smaller space or already live in a smaller space, and really buy into what Never Too Small is trying to advocate in a way about how small living works in a growing cities.
Yeah. And I guess when your community trusts you and they know what kind of topics you are really at your heart and what your mission is, then they're engaged more, right? Because I can say from our perspective, we're how old are we now? I think 1.5 years approximately. And one of the biggest challenges we have is how do we grow our community, not from an audience, but actually into a community, and how do we do that? And we also have to say, okay, we have to engage more, we have to include them more. But what a lot of people forget is when they want to launch brands or projects like the ones that you have as well with Never Too Small, is it takes a lot of time. And Colin, you said it, you have like a whole team behind it. You have Lindsay that's helping, or I think Lucy, you said her name was, who's helping, and you two are both two people and not just one, and it takes a lot of time with all the little details, and all the details are super important. And that's what I'm hearing also from you're saying, Joel, and I think this is also probably the experience you bring from your agency, from that whole digital huge world that you've been in before. What details do we have to pay attention to and actually take time for? Because you mentioned thumbnail meetings. There are meetings for that. I don't know how many people are on that call deciding that. Is that the whole team of 4 or 5 people, or?
I think it's 5, 6, 7 sometimes. There's a couple of people from New McPherson Agency who jump on as well. So it's they're robust discussions, and you know what, you actually don't ever get as better an answer as you do from the audience, you know, when you ask them. And it was actually only recently that we were all like, I like number 2 and I like number 3, and I think this one's really good. And it's like, you know what? Why don't we ask our audience? And the answers actually came back very, very concisely around 1. Like it was like 1, 1, 1, 1, 1. Like Cole, that's the one we did yesterday as well.
That's right. Yeah, that's the one.
It was like I didn't see that one. That wasn't one that I liked at all. I was not backing that one in. I think what I got from my agency was, you know, we were a creative digital agency, and that was the beauty plays a very important role in people's digital experiences. Like to create something for somebody, to create something online where it may be functional, but where their eyes widen when they see it or touch it for the first time, and they go, oh my God, this is something special, and this is something I want to engage with.
Yeah.
You just can't undervalue the value of beauty in this world. And I think we sort of rushed towards to getting products out there and pushing things out and stuff like that. But if you take the time to really think about what people want and make something beautiful and deliver it in a way that's packaged up nicely, you'll always be successful.
Yeah, and how to contribute to, I feel, is important too. If we are talking about sustainability in general, it's how to contribute something that is worthwhile and that is actually helping.
Yeah, and it's actually for Never Too Small, each episode we really craft them carefully, and as well as, you know, when we really can shoot as many apartments as we want if we don't really pick them. And then we don't call ourselves collecting, we call ourselves curating. So it's not, because sometimes audience will send their design or other designer will send, and then sometimes it's not up to our standards. And then what we really want is when we present something, it's really something special in terms of not just visually special. Sometimes it's the story or how they make the space works for certain people, or, you know, how challenging the floor plan is, or, you know, how challenging the building structure itself is. And those are the little details that we look at. And what I really hope for is people who watch Never Too Small, it's not that they're going to renovate their place exactly the same. There's one really interesting story that happened to me is that I used to wear Never Too Small hoodie a lot, which is Love My Own brand. And one day someone recognized me, and then he came out and said, he didn't know I was the creator because I never was in the screen. He said, do you work for Never Too Small? It's such a cool YouTube, blah, 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 blah. And I said, I actually created the creator for it. And then he thanked me. He said he and his wife and their toddler live in a 2-bedroom apartments in the city. And then he always feel like it's such a cramped apartment, and then the wife and him, they're looking to move into the suburbs. It's more affordable, but they really love to live in the city. And then he said, after watching your Never Too Small, we learned that, you know, how buying the right furniture is right, choosing the right curtain is right. And what they did is they changed the dining table set, and then they put the shelf from floor to ceiling, what they learned from Never Too Small, in their kids' room, and then put all the their belongings up there and then close it with a curtain, which they learned from one of the episodes. So they pick things from here and there and put together. And then they say now they absolutely love the apartment. They don't have to move to the suburbs because he works in the suburbs.
Cool.
Yeah, so that story.
I didn't know that, Cole. I love that story.
But those are the stories that keep you going, right? I mean,
yeah, that experience really make me feel so, all really touchy and warmy and make it worthwhile.
Did you cry, Cole?
Not really. I didn't. And then he took a picture with me.
No, but I bet the guy got a hug. I bet the guy got a hug.
We couldn't because that's during last year during lockdown
right.
time.
Oh man.
Yeah, he saw me in the supermarket, which is kind of odd. And it's that because sometimes we have people asking, saying, you keep showing those expensive design, why? Like, it's not affordable, but we are showing the ideas of it. Not exactly you have to renovate that one. I think the ideas itself is so important for tiny space design.
Yeah.
if
That's
you
actually how
you look at something really good.
Yeah, that's actually how I found you. I think 2 years ago, I discovered the tiny house movement, and I'm a strategist, so I go down rabbit holes willingly, and I just then that's how I discovered Never Too Small, and that was by far one of the most inspiring things I had seen, and since then I've always been, I always watch it, and I love what you both are doing, and and I'm very excited to what the future will bring also. But speaking about inspiration, and I feel like we I want to wrap it up because I could talk for ages with you both on all kinds of different topics. But what we like to wrap up our conversations with is to ask how our guests get inspired. And you mentioned that inspiration just now, Colin, from the person you met, the fan who saw your video. Where do you both find your inspiration for anything? It doesn't have to be related to Never Too Small, but how do you stay creatively jacked?
Joe?
I love watching people reach their potential. Like I used to run a big design team in a big agency, and watching people actually achieve more than they thought they could achieve is one of the most thrilling things on the planet. And it makes me, every time I see somebody do that, I realize how much further I have to go as well individually. And I think that's for me, it's like, you think you reach your limit, you think you get tired, you get creatively, juiced out, you got nothing left in the tank, and then you see somebody do something amazing that they didn't think they could do, and you go, oh my God, like we're as human beings, we're incredible. Like we're so capable, and we're so able to do the most amazing things if we push ourselves. And the difference between people being successful creatively and not being successful creatively are like Colin. Like, it's like whether you put your videos up on YouTube and you walk away and you go, that's a fail, or you send that email off to the Canadian company and say, hey, I'm doing something here. Are you interested in it or not? And that's the difference between human potential and not. Some people are no good at something and they try stuff and bless them. But a lot of people are really good at things and they don't actually really try hard enough. And I think that's the worst thing, the worst thing you can do. So when I see people reach for something and surprise themselves and look back at, at what they've achieved and go, wow, I didn't think I could do that, but boy, I'm so proud. That makes me, first of all, want to do more and makes me really happy.
That's so cool. Other people inspire you most. How about you, Colin? Where do you get your inspiration?
Oh, my inspiration comes from very different places, really. I guess I get, like Joe said, creatively, what do you call it? Juice out. I have that all the time.
Juice out. Yeah, I just made that up. I don't know if that's a thing or not.
I think that sounds good. I'm going to use that too. I like that.
And I often have difficult making quick decisions. I'm more of a person who get juiced out and then I need a break and then I just do other things. My inspiration a lot of time comes from music, which is unrelated to visual. And then I guess with music, I imagine music videos and then I get some visual, how to film the apartment, stuff like that, or other ideas. But I like to look at weird stuff, how people catch attention, like I don't like boring stuff, to be honest, like pretty boring stuff. I often find like wacky techies design sort of trigger my creativity, and then
but where do you see those, online or where do you see that kind of stuff?
Sometimes in contemporary art gallery, you know, they put a pile of sand there, and then people say, like, what is that? And I'm looking at, oh, that's interesting, you know, catch my attention. And you know, sometimes I make funny cakes, like sometimes I make ugly cakes.
That was a huge jump there.
And I used to like to make crazy stuff or techie stuff, like baking gingerbread and making it into baby feeders and give it to my friend just for the joke, saying she's pregnant. And I think from that, and I realized that when you do wacky stuff like that, people tend to post it online and then they're making fun of it. That's why Never Too Small is such a totally not what you see on the regular YouTube videos. We are totally opposite, but in the classy opposite. So that's how we get attention. That's why the other day I was telling Joe we want to have our tote bag design. I want to have an older lady carrying our tote bag, because it's not so much of to inspire people to dress like the old lady. It's more like getting people the attention to look at the lady, and then they look at the tote bag and then they realize it's this. Because wacky stuff get attention, and then I love wacky stuff, and I love contemporary art, and
So look outside your bubble.
Sorry?
Look outside your bubble.
Yeah, look outside the bubbles, that's right. And then look at what people do and don't copy them, basically.
Yeah. I love that. I think that's a very powerful end note at the end, because that's where we started, basically. You said there was so much weird stuff out there in terms of video and small spaces, and now we're ending on the note, find your own thing, basically, and don't copy paste, and contribute something. Yeah, I love that. So thank you so much for joining us, and we could go on forever, but I do want to give you the chance to have a last shout out, where people can find you, where people can order the book, and look at the videos. Maybe you can give that. Colin is celebrating. So where are you on social media? Where can people find Never Too Small?
Joe, you want to say?
I mean, if you want to have a look at the book, go to nevertoosmall.com, and you can't miss it. But follow us on YouTube, and if you love what we have to say, then maybe you'll fall in love with what we have to say and what we do, and maybe you want to buy the book. I don't want to push the book, but if you haven't heard of us, check out our videos.
Yes, that's Never Too Small on YouTube, I think, and Instagram as well is Never Too Small.
And Instagram is NTV, Never Too NTVS. Is that right?
Yeah, I'm just
we're gonna link it. We're gonna link it too.
Yeah.
So.
What exciting is coming up for Never Too Small is that we might want to sort of have online courses of designing small spaces to be available. I'm not sure if in the future people listen to this podcast, probably can try to find us on Patreon if we go with the Patreon format for the membership. And it's definitely worth signing for, because it's going to be have me representing the audience to go and seek for the answers how to design a small space better to live in. Gosh, my languages go funny anyway.
It's 5 p.m. or 6 p.m. your time now, so.
It's definitely worthwhile, because we're going to talk to some most talented architects and designers. And then not only that, we probably talk to experts in urban planning and whatnot, if you're into that as well. And also maybe Joe's talking about how to write interior design book course. Who knows?
Book volume 2, Never Too Small, is coming at some point. But I think as well we're going to. I mean, you look at Monocle magazine and what they do from a publishing point of view. We've got other ideas for books that we can bring out, which will inspire people in different ways other than just showcasing. Like, let's actually teach people how to do it themselves, and let's actually do walkthroughs of how what a small home or tiny apartment renovation looks like from start to finish, with warts and all. Like, where do we fail? What do we do well? Where do we learn? So there's a bunch of ideas that we're brewing.
That sounds really cool.
We could have more time to cover our topics, because really in 2050, 7 in 10 of us will be living in the cities. So city living is going to be a big part of us, like, majority of the populations in the world. So it is time now for us to slowly exploring how to make it better. And then, so hopefully Never Too Small is going to be like the first starting point for people who has no design background or architecture background or urban planning background, who can still learn a bit of information and knowledge from our channel, at the same time get entertained and relaxed. Yeah.
Zen.
Calm.
Be calm.
Calm.
Zen.
Yes.
Calm. Yeah.
Well,
Yeah.
I think that's a very contemporary mission and vision. And thank you so much both.
Thank
Sorry,
you.
now
Thank you.
it's
Thank you, that's
getting to me too, Colin.
Well done, Jojo.
Yes, thank you,
You
both,
too,
and
Jojo,
enjoy your evening. And we hope maybe in a year, when your courses will be online and live, we can invite you back and see how that's part of the journey.
No, we couldn't get Lindsay on talking to you as well.
Yeah, so
absolutely.
Thank you so much, and good luck with Never Too Small, and order the book, people. I think it's going to be great. I'm going to order it.
The whole world stops just like that.
Thanks for tuning in to the Creative Insider Podcast. We hope you enjoyed the conversation and we inspired you, gave you ideas, or just got you through your workday. If you'd like to connect with us, please feel free to drop us a line, an emoji, a picture, a post, anything on Instagram. You can find us at TCI Podcast. You can also find us on LinkedIn, on the Creative Insider page, or you can join us on one of our creative aperitivos on Clubhouse. If you'd like to give us some love, show us some kudos, a little appreciation, why not grab a coffee with us? We're both avid coffee drinkers. If you head on over to thecreativeinsider.com, you can sponsor us a coffee or two. And if you'd like to invite us into your inbox, we'd be thrilled and honored. Please consider subscribing to our newsletter. Monthly, we send you highlights, creative inspiration, or anything that we find is shaking our creative sphere. So join us in the Creative Insider universe and help us build a world with more accomplished creatives.
The world stops just